I've been making retrospectives for almost 2 years at this point, and I've started to notice a bit of a personal trend. I don't really cover the portable entries for any of these series when applicable, basically just a one and done after my not so great experience when revisiting Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. This may lead you to believe I don't like these portable entries or don't care to cover them, which just isn't the case. I have a lot of nostalgia towards systems like the Nintendo DS and the PlayStation Portable and the wealth of games that accompanied them. So I'm not really sure why I skip over these experiences, but it changes now. I have too many fond memories playing God of War Chains of Olympus to skip over it. I played this game into absolute oblivion back in the day, replaying the game over and over and over again. I mean, it was a God of War game that I could take anywhere. The only thing at the time that would have topped it would have been if I could have done the same thing with Halo. Chains of Olympus just felt like a true God of War experience that was now on the go. I loved fighting the Persians since I just discovered 300 around this time. I have fond memories facing off against the bosses, and I remember the story being a great time. So needless to say, I was excited to revisit God of War Chains of Olympus today, and well, here we are. It's been around 13 years in between playthroughs, but now that I've finished revisiting the game, the question is, how well does God of War Chains of Olympus hold up today, and is it worth your time revisiting or playing for the first time? Let's find out. Just quickly, before we begin, this is my third video on the God of War series so far, so if you've just found the channel, I recommend catching up on this series of retrospectives. Click the link in the top right hand corner or in the description below for the playlist, and what the hell, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Alright, let's get started. The story for Chains of Olympus takes place about halfway through Kratos' 10 years of service to the gods of Olympus, and begins with Kratos being sent to the city of Attica to help defend the city from the invading Persian army. Quickly after arriving, Kratos encounters the Persian army's pet basilisk, and after wounding the creature, we make chase through the city to stop it for good. As we progress through the city, Kratos stumbles across the Persian king, and after the king insults Sparta, well, he gets his head crushed for his troubles. After this brief distraction, and possibly a further distraction, Kratos finally catches up with the basilisk and slays the beast once and for all. Much like in God of War 2, Kratos begins to gloat about his success before witnessing the sun fall from the sky as the world plummets into darkness. Yeah, he should probably learn to keep his mouth shut. Kratos follows the small source of remaining light to the city of Marathon and learns that Helios has fallen and Morpheus, the god of dreams, is quickly gaining power. After making our way through the city of Marathon, witnessing the power of Morpheus taking over the land, Kratos manages to reach the temple of Helios, the source of the only remaining light and the sun chariot. Before entering the temple, Kratos encounters Athena, who tells us that Helios has disappeared, and Morpheus has seized his moment and caused the gods to fall into a deep slumber. Naturally, Athena wants Kratos to find Helios, as only he can release Morpheus's grip on the other gods and reduce his power, as she dangles the reward of ridding Kratos of his nightmares for further incentive. As we progress through Helios' temple, Kratos encounters Helios' sister, Eos, who informs the ghost of Sparta that the Titan Atlas has escaped his bonds and captured Helios. Eos promises to convince Zeus to free Kratos of his nightmares and service, which he doesn't believe but still agrees. We manage to find the primordial fire needed to awaken the fire steeds and hop on the sun chariot to see where the steeds take us. The fire steeds fly us straight into the underworld, where they cannot go, and leave Kratos to plummet into Hades' realm. On the river Styx, Kratos meets Charon the ferryman, who warns the Spartan that it is not his time yet. Kratos doesn't listen though, and after a brief confrontation, Charon knocks out Kratos and drops him into the hellscape of Tartarus. It's in this realm where Kratos discovers that we are definitely short one Titan, as Atlas's chains are visibly broken, meaning someone has broken him free. But who would do such a thing? We manage to make our way back up to the River Styx, now with a shiny new toy, and defeat Charon and gain control over his ferry, which Kratos uses to follow the light illuminating the underworld, down the River Styx and coming upon the Temple of Persephone. As we arrive at the temple, to Kratos' shock, he sees his deceased daughter Calliope playing her flute along the shores of the temple. Kratos follows his daughter into the temple, but we're always just a step behind, and eventually Kratos encounters Persephone, the queen of the underworld, instead. Persephone tells Kratos that Calliope is in the Elysium fields, and he can be with her again, but only if he can rid himself of his past evils to become worthy of Elysium. She means for Kratos to give up his powers given to him by the gods, which he does without hesitation, despite Persephone's warnings that this choice will doom the world. Kratos regains his humanity after transferring his power to the Forsaken Tree and is reunited with his daughter. And all's well that ends well. Obviously, this doesn't last long as, well, this is a prequel. Persephone quickly appears, taunting and mocking Kratos for his decision as she reveals her master plan. Resentful for being betrayed by Zeus, tricked by Hades, and abandoned by the gods, Persephone was the one who freed Atlas. She reveals that whilst Kratos was disarming himself, Atlas was carrying out her plan of destroying the pillar that holds up the world with the power of Helios, and tells us that she plans to kill everyone, including herself, to free her from her situation. Kratos realizes that this would mean not even Elysium is safe, and even if he stayed with Calliope, it would be short-lived. So as much as it pains Kratos, he casts aside his daughter, regains his power by slaughtering the souls of Elysium, and at Calliope's horror, returns to being the ghost of Sparta and pursues Persephone. Kratos catches up with Persephone at the World Pillar, kills her and chains Atlas, forcing him to hold it up for eternity. Kratos rides the Sun Chariot back into the sky, pushing Morpheus' influence away, and that's the end of Chains of Olympus. Well, except for an end credit scene that really doesn't add too much, so yeah, that's the end of the story for Chains of Olympus. Now, first and foremost, is this the best story in the series? No, it's not. There are definitely problems here, especially the more you look at it from a critical viewpoint, but I do just want to say that in the moment, I had a good time with the story. I think the story's faults do come down to the much shorter runtime here. For comparison, God of War and God of War 2 took me around 9 to 10 hours to get through, and Chains of Olympus took me just under 4 hours. That's not a whole heap of time we're dealing with, and in a lot of aspects it feels like that. The story just feels like it has a grand idea. I mean, you begin the game fighting off a Persian invasion, Helios has been taken, with the sun gone, Morpheus has swooped on the opportunity to be rid of the gods and take over, a Titan has been set free from Tartarus, along with getting more context as to what sort of service Kratos was serving for the gods, and more character development shown with his interactions with his daughter, and how easily he can dismiss humanity for himself. All these puzzle pieces, in theory, could make for a truly epic story and adventure, and that's why in the moment the story is a great time. It's upon reflection where you realize these elements just don't get the time to properly stretch their legs, and it ends up feeling rushed. For being the main objective, it doesn't feel like you ever saved Helios. Morpheus is never seen, barely represented, and then abruptly thrown to the side for Persephone. I loved Kratos' moments with his daughter Calliope in Elysium, further showing a softer side to the ghost of Sparta, but laughable QuickTime event aside, how quickly Kratos can get his powers back and why he has to kill the souls to get them feels like the writers had written themselves into a corner. Why Persephone told Kratos her plans doesn't make a ton of sense either, as he was none the wiser. They just missed out on a lot of potential in this story, and I think they wanted to tell a story suited for a console experience, but the portable nature hindered them a little bit. But I don't want this to all be negatives, because I still think there is quite a bit to like here. Again, I do enjoy seeing Kratos' other emotions, and seeing him interact with Calliope and ultimately break her heart as she witnesses his destruction is a great story touch, and this furthers his character as to why he becomes so fed up with the gods' promises. I love the new theme of betrayal and the central message of do not trust the gods, which permeates through each character. Kratos is constantly betrayed by the gods who never fulfill their promises, Atlas locked away for being a titan, Persephone kidnapped and left to stay with Hades by the other gods, Charon a slave to the gods never to be set free, Helios betrayed by Persephone, even to a lesser extent the gods themselves betrayed by Morpheus. It's a consistent theme that isn't revenge for a change, and it makes the story here feel unique. As has been the case with the rest of the series, I'm still a sucker for the mythology. I'm always intrigued and interested in regards to what new myths we'll get to see and interact with, and on a personal level, it will consistently keep my attention from beginning to end. Whether it be the basilisk, though it needs a few more feathers or rooster-like qualities, the Persian myths make an appearance with an Ifrit Jinn, a demon genie essentially, witnessing the stark contrast between Hades and the river Styx to Tartarus and Elysium is amazing. Learning about Persephone, Charon and Helios, I just love to see this sort of stuff. Overall, in the moment, the story is a good time, but it's probably best to move on afterwards and not reflect and dissect it too much. I think all the pieces are here for a really amazing story. They just weren't able to piece the puzzle together, and whether that was due to too grand a concept for a short portable title, or just not knowing what to cut and what to expand on, I don't know, but it does end up being a solid story, just nothing great, which is unfortunate because I can really see the potential to be great here. Ready at Dawn's greatest accomplishment in regards to God of War Chains of Olympus is how well they managed to emulate the God of War console experience onto a portable device. Because the gameplay here in Chains of Olympus feels like a true God of War experience, just with a portable mindset. Seriously, after going from God of War to God of War 2 and now Chains of Olympus, the gameplay didn't skip a beat. Obviously, you notice the portable additions to the formula to allow for a more stop and go style of system, like the plentiful save points and shorter combat encounters for example. But at its core, this is a true God of War experience, and that is to be commended. But let's get into specifics, and of course, we've got to talk about the combat first. As always, the combat in Chains of Olympus is fluent, satisfying, and just plain fun. We know the basics at this point in the series, so I won't bore you with a retelling, and instead, I want to talk about the new additions and improvements, as well as the unfortunate backsteps. In terms of Kratos' arsenal this time around, we have the tried and true Blades of Chaos, Gauntlet of Zeus, Ifrit, Light of Dawn, Charon's Wrath, and the Sun Shield. Right off the bat, I want to say that the magic ability Light of Dawn I forgot existed until the very end of the game when I discovered it on accident. I think I must have looked away during the tutorial prompt or something, but I legitimately thought we just had the two magic abilities and two weapons. I just wanted to get that out of the way in the beginning because I don't have many thoughts on the ability, and that's why. As for the rest of Kratos' arsenal though, I loved what was on offer here. Ifrit is the new AoE ability with a Persian demon genie twist, and yes, it's Poseidon's Rage types of useful. Charon's Wrath is a really effective stun and almost a hold up I'll get to you in a minute ability, which is always helpful when trying to preserve combos, and the Sun Shield makes blocking and parrying just feel satisfying. The Blades of Chaos are the Blades of Chaos, again tried and true and a go-to. But here in Chains of Olympus, they finally have a worthy competitor because the Gauntlet of Zeus is powerful yet quick, an up-close and personal weapon, yet can cover distance with ease, it just plain and simple feels great to use. So much so that I all but gave up on the blades after I unlocked the gauntlet because I just had a blast using this weapon. Obviously, you are sacrificing a wealth of combinations and attacking from a distance when choosing to use the gauntlet as opposed to the blades, but man, the satisfaction of smacking around the enemies with the gauntlet just outweighs any drawbacks, and makes for a great change of pace for me personally after going back to back with this series. In terms of the arsenal, it's all good stuff. Unfortunately, the combat itself does feel a lot simpler. For example, there are a few too many areas where you'll encounter enemies that can simply be defeated by a singular circle button press. I mean, just look at this elevator. Why even make this a combat encounter? Don't get me wrong, this isn't all the time, and overall the combat is still enjoyable, but and I know this comparison is unfair, but it was the last game I played. Compared to God of War 2, it is a step backwards. Chains of Olympus feels much more like the original God of War. I noticed this primarily in the combinations with the Blades of Chaos because the basic square and triangle combinations once again just make the other combinations irrelevant. Square, square, triangle is once again king, and this is frustrating because if they just added some invincibility frames towards the ends of the bigger combinations like the Cyclone, or let me cancel out mid-combo, then this isn't an issue and allows for more free-flowing combat and actually makes me want to level up the blades to unlock more potential variety. On the nitpickier side, there are no real large encounters with a wealth of various enemies, but I do understand there would have been limitations for the hardware. The last section of combat also feels a bit rushed, like they copy-pasted, so a bit of a bummer to end the game on. The camera can lead to more cheap shots off-screen than I'd like, and for some reason, some of the barriers to progress didn't despawn upon finishing a battle for a little bit, leaving me just standing around waiting. As always though, the boss battles are what this series is known for, so how are the bosses in Chains of Olympus? They're pretty good. There's only 4, but given the shorter runtime, that makes sense. The Basilisk and the Persian King are the tutorial bosses, with the Basilisk playing a lot like the Hydra battle in the original, as you encounter the beast at various junctions throughout Attica, and the Persian King being a great teaching tool for dodging with easy to avoid swings and attacks. They're great teaching tools to again either shake out the cobwebs for returning players or teach new players the ropes, and it's just satisfying finishing a boss by crushing their skull or taking down a giant beast. Charon the Ferryman is probably my favourite fight in the game, even though the first meeting is just waiting for him to knock you out. When the actual fight begins though, it's a great time and some attacks are pretty challenging to avoid. Charon's Wrath almost did me in a few times in this fight, and I just love that sort of stress in a boss battle. It's quite a lengthy fight with Charon healing at various stages until you destroy all 3 pillars, and after each pillar is destroyed, his attacks just get quicker. There is a lot of elements to this fight. Charon attacks with his scythe, Charon's Wrath, the orbs that you can either dodge or throw back at him, but I'd get the practice of reflecting his attacks now because that's how you complete the fight after his death fake out. Charon's fight just has a lot of moving pieces, poses a good threat, and all in all is a pretty memorable fight for the series. Persephone is our final fight and reminds me a lot of the Lachesis fight from God of War 2, which isn't a bad thing at all. Her attacks have a quick wind up, she does a good chunk of damage, has unblockable attacks, mixes it up between melee and range attacks, has a lot of various attacks that you need to quickly learn and adjust to, and all in all, this is a great battle. I do wish she took more damage from our attacks because it really feels like we're doing bugger all to her health bar at times, and I would also like if the sun symbol wasn't present during the second phase because every time I wounded her I thought I needed to use this and my game was just bugged. The second phase as well is more or less dodge the attacks until you can reflect her projectile and wound her, so I personally liked the initial phase better. If I was to nitpick about the bosses, I don't think the number of fights is a problem, but when you have 2 at the beginning and more or less 2 at the end, well, why not space them out a little? That's really my only issue though, because I think the bosses here in Chains of Olympus are a good time. God of War isn't all combat though. Except, well, in Chains of Olympus it basically is. Yeah, the platforming definitely got the axe here, and the puzzles are much fewer and further apart, so this section will be short. The mechanics are all here for the puzzles and platforming, but it's like they said, alright, we need to use everything, but we probably only have time to do it once. There is just the one balance beam with a cheeky trophy, just one swimming segment, one moving platform section, that sort of thing. The puzzles don't fare much better. In fact, I actually don't remember any except for the light reflection puzzle because it was really enjoyable. Aside from that, it's a lot of pushing blocks and picking up bodies, nothing all that special. Once again, I have been a little more negative than I expected in regards to the gameplay, but don't get it twisted, I had a lot of fun playing Chains of Olympus. It's clear though how the portable nature restricted some decisions and some elements do feel rushed, but at the end of the day, the combat is still a good time, the Gauntlet of Zeus is a badass secondary weapon, and the bosses are great battles. Not perfect, and my nostalgia may be coming out here, but I had a blast playing all these years later. So, was God of War Chains of Olympus as good as I remembered? No, it wasn't. I'll be the first to admit that it's got some drawbacks, such as the story, basic combinations overpowering the unlockable combos, and not as much platforming and puzzles to mix it up in between combat. With all that being said though, I do have a lot of respect for Chains of Olympus because again, it needs to be stated, this was a portable God of War experience that felt like it could be on consoles. It's not the best game in the series, but by no means do I think this is a bad game. And if you're a fan of God of War, I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy Chains of Olympus as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I really did enjoy my time revisiting God of War Chains of Olympus, and I hope you enjoyed revisiting the game with me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave it a like because it helps let me know that you enjoyed yourself. Comment below your thoughts on God of War Chains of Olympus or the series in general, as well as any suggestions for games you want to see covered in the future. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, go give my socials a follow if you fancy, @MayorHairBear, and I'll catch you all in the next video.